Right before a $70 million corporate pitch went live, I whispered 4 words that stopped the room cold. That's the wrong equation. Dozens of suits turned toward me. The waitress no one noticed. But that single whisper would not just save a company. It would expose everything they thought they knew about people like me. I'd worked on that conference floor for almost 2 years. Long enough to learn that some rooms don't just smell of coffee and ambition. They smell of hierarchy. Expensive cologne. Burnt nerves. Conversations spoken in coded arrogance. Every morning, I polished glasses that cost more than my paycheck and smiled at people who wouldn't remember my face 5 minutes later. But that day, Tuesday, June 14th, felt different. The air was electric, tense, heavy with something I couldn't name. The company, Brightwell Analytics, was preparing a live pitch to secure a $70 million merger with a tech giant from Singapore. Investors from 3 time zones were already logged in on the video wall. The presentation had been rehearsed to death. Everyone looked sharp, confident, invincible. But when I walked past that open boardroom door, something on the screen made my breath hitch. The formula they used, a core part of their valuation, was wrong. I recognized it instantly. My brain calculated the difference before I even blinked. Their growth curve was inverted. The numbers would balloon falsely in year 3, then implode under scrutiny. I froze, heart pounding. I was just the black waitress serving coffee. Not a data scientist. Not anymore. But old instincts screamed in my head. So I said it. Quiet, but clear. That's the wrong equation. The room went dead silent. Every head turned toward me, confusion etched into every face. The CEO, Elliot Graham, tall, manicured, radiating authority, frowned. I'm sorry, what did you say? My throat was dry, but I answered. Your elasticity coefficient is reversed. That model will collapse under real data pressure. A few of them laughed. One man in a grey suit whispered, Did she just say coefficient? Elliot took a step closer, his tone dripping with condescension. You're the server, right? Maybe focus on your tray instead of our finances. I felt my face heat, but my voice didn't waver. I'm just saying, if that equation goes live, you'll be presenting a false valuation. More laughter. A woman at the end of the table rolled her eyes. She probably read that word off a magazine cover. And that moment, that laughter, was everything wrong with the world I lived in. The assumption that because of my skin, my job, my title, I couldn't possibly be right. Elliot dismissed me with a wave of his hand. Please, let's keep our focus professional. I nodded, turned away, and whispered under my breath. Professionalism dies where arrogance begins. I walked back to the catering prep area, heart still thundering. I tried to focus on aligning the cups, refilling the carafes. But my mind wouldn't stop spinning. Because once, not that long ago, I'd been one of them. At 22, I was a top data science student at MIT. My models had been published in the Journal of Computational Systems. I'd been invited to intern at Google's AI research lab. My mother, a single parent who cleaned hospital floors, cried when I told her. She said, Baby, you're the future of our family. Then she collapsed 2 weeks later. Stroke. No insurance. The bills destroyed everything we had. I dropped out, took 2 jobs, and never went back. My scholarship evaporated. The world doesn't pause for black women in crisis. It just keeps moving while you fight to breathe. And now, here I was, in the same city that had once held my dreams, wiping down trays while people with my old ambitions laughed over lattes. The irony wasn't lost on me. At 10:55 a.m., I carried another tray of drinks down the hallway. The door to the boardroom was half open, and I caught sight of the countdown clock on the main screen. Live IN 2 o'clock. I heard snippets. The graph doesn't match last quarter's data, someone whispered. Who changed the source file? The CFO's voice cracked through the tension. It's too late to recalc. Just run it. My pulse quickened. They hadn't fixed it. Without thinking, I stepped through the doorway again. Don't run it, I said. Every eye turned. The producer froze mid-step. Who are you? Jordan Ellis, I said, voice steadier this time. And your base growth rate is off by 6%. You'll lose credibility on the first investor question. Elliot's jaw tightened. We've run these numbers for weeks. You don't know what you're talking about. I pointed at the screen. That's not loyalty modeling, that's static retention. You're assuming a linear decay when your real-world data shows behavioral drift. It's the difference between making $70 million and losing everything. The clock hit 0:30. Someone whispered, she's right. The curve's wrong. Elliot turned to the team. Freeze the slide. I should have been terrified. But I wasn't. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I grabbed a marker from the whiteboard tray and wrote fast, the math flowing like second nature. Years of silence poured into every symbol. The equation you need, I said, is dt equals e caret, lambda t times ct. That model's adaptive churn, not static. The coefficient you used was pre-pandemic. It assumes customer loyalty never changed. But it did. Everything changed. The analyst near the corner, Marcus, the only other black face in the room, typed furiously. She's right, he said. That matches the real retention pattern. The CFO leaned over his laptop. The new graph recalculated, dropping sharply, then stabilizing at a realistic curve. Gasps. Realization. Elliot's face was drained of color. We can't present this now, he muttered. You can, I said. It's the truth. And truth always holds. The producer's voice echoed from the speaker. Live in 5 seconds. Elliot's eyes flicked between me, the screen, and the camera light turning red. Then he said the words that would change everything. Leave it. The next 20 minutes were a blur. Elliot led the pitch, but every number, every slide, every ounce of confidence he projected came from my correction. I stood quietly behind the camera, heart pounding, hands clenched, as the investors nodded in approval. When the feed ended, no one clapped. They just exhaled. The deal had gone through. $70 million secured. And in that silence, Elliot turned to me. How did you know all that? I met his gaze. Because numbers don't lie. People do. By evening, my phone was exploding. Someone from the tech blog Venture Signal had clipped the live moment, me whispering, that's the wrong equation. It spread like wildfire. Headlines read, Black Waitress corrects $70 million pitch in real time. The genius no one saw coming. But beneath the praise came the ugliness. Fake story. She probably just got lucky. Affirmative action gone viral. And one that still haunts me. She knew that equation? Impossible. She's lying. I'd expected admiration. What I got was exposure. And with it, the reminder that no matter how right you are, racism will find a way to question it. 2 days later, Elliot asked me to come in. He was different, quieter, humbler. He thanked me. Offered me a position. Senior data advisor, he said, almost awkwardly. But not everyone was happy. One executive muttered, so we're hiring catering staff as consultants now. Another said under his breath, optics play, huh? Smart. I smiled politely. But inside, I was exhausted. Black excellence always comes with invisible footnotes. Prove it again, prove it harder, prove it perfectly. And so I did. For months, I built models that redefined their forecasting. I taught Marcus how to identify bias in machine learning sets. I led late-night recalibrations, earning respect one corrected decimal at a time. But even then, I heard the whispers. She's good, for someone without a degree. She's articulate. She's lucky she got noticed. Luck had nothing to do with it. Survival did. 6 months later, they asked me to speak at the National Innovation Forum. A sea of suits. Cameras. Spotlight. My hands trembled as I stood at the podium, looking at faces that had once looked through me. When I spoke up that day, I began. It wasn't courage. It was exhausting. I was tired of brilliance being mistaken for luck. Tired of silence protecting lies. I paused. The room was so still I could hear my own heartbeat. I am not the exception, I said. I am the rule you've been ignoring. There are thousands of black women running equations in their heads, while mopping floors, managing kids, surviving. The difference between me and them is that a microphone happened to be on. Applause. Not polite, thunderous. That moment changed my life. But it also made me realize something else. I wasn't meant to just fix equations. I was meant to fix access. A year later, Brightwell launched a new initiative, the Ellis Fellowship for Underrepresented Analysts. My name was on the plaque, etched in silver glass. And sometimes, I walk past the conference room where it all began, the room where a whisper became a revolution. The same coffee table still stands there. But now, when interns walk in, they see a framed quote on the wall. Brilliance doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes it wears an apron. I still serve coffee sometimes, just to remind myself where I came from. And every time I pour it, I think of my mother, the woman who taught me that quiet dignity is its own kind of rebellion. A few months ago, I visited a middle school in Atlanta. I spoke to a classroom of young black girls about math, confidence, and courage. Afterward, one little girl stayed behind. She was maybe 10, hair in neat braids, notebook hugged to her chest. She looked up at me and said, Were you scared? When you said something in that big room? I smiled softly. Terrified. Then why'd you do it? She asked. I knelt so our eyes met. Because I was more scared of staying silent. Silence kills more dreams than failure ever could. She nodded slowly. I want to be like you. And I told her the truth. Don't be like me. Be louder. This morning, I walked back into the same building where it all began. The same glass doors. The same marble floor. But this time, my name was on the directory, Jordan Ellis, Director of Predictive Modeling. I passed by a new waitress setting out coffee cups. She looked nervous. Young. Invisible in the same way I once was. I caught her eye and said, You see that screen in there? Don't be afraid to speak up if something's wrong. She smiled shyly. Even if I'm just the waitress? Especially if you're the waitress, I said. When people ask me how I survived it all, I tell them this. I stopped trying to fit into equations that were never built for me. The world may still see me as the woman who got lucky. But I know better. I didn't just correct math that day. I corrected bias. And maybe that's the formula the world still refuses to balance. If my story touched you, if it made you feel something, share it. Comment where you're watching from. Tell me about the moments you refused to stay silent. And please, help us grow Black Diaries by hitting like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. We're on a mission to hit 5,000 subscribers, and every story brings us closer to shining a light on the truth, the pain, and the power of the Black experience in America. Come back tomorrow, because on Black Diaries, we post real stories every day. Stories that remind the world that brilliance doesn't need permission. It just needs to be heard.